Hey everybody, welcome to the video. So we're breaking down the Monday Night Football Showdown Slate for tonight on Draftkings, and I am looking forward to this game. I'm sure most of America is as well, and the other countries that happen to watch the NFL. But we got Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and primetime, two of the most fun players to watch in all of football. And you got the skill position players with Marquise Hollywood Brown, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mark Andrews, and some other guys as well. So this is going to be a pretty exciting game. We got a 54-point over-under with only a 3.5-point spread. So it should be a pretty high-scoring back-and-forth matchup, which is going to be very fun for DFS purposes. And a lot of season-long fantasy football matchups for Week 3 are going to be decided tonight because, like I said, there's a ton of good fantasy options on this slate. So really looking forward to it. I'm sure you guys are as well. But before we continue, as always, if you guys could just leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, you might as well hit that subscribe button. And we're all season long trying to help you guys become better NFL DFS players, and I cover other sports as well. So if you're guys are going to keep coming back each and every single day or each and every single week, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn the notification bell so you don't miss out whenever I post new videos. And if you don't follow me on social media, the handle's in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And if you want to support my content over on Patreon, it's always much appreciated, but please just wait until the first of the month, because if you don't know how Patreon works, it's going to charge you when you sign up, and it's going to charge you on the first of the month, and it's September 28th, so just wait until August 1st and just get the week 4 content if you are interested. But you get access to the data sheets and my Discord chat as well. So if you're interested, links down below. If not, that's fine. Let's just dive into tonight's slate. So as always, we'll start with the quarterback position, and these guys are super expensive, so it might be hard to fit both in, but I would really like to try to, because these guys' upsides are just absolutely unmatched. They're two of the most exciting players in football. Their upsides are insane. Each guy has potential to score 4 touchdowns, whether it's on the ground or through the air. And they have some pretty good options to throw the ball to as well. Now, Patrick Mahomes has more weapons than Lamar Jackson does, but Lamar Jackson's got that rushing upside. If I had to pick one, I'm going to side with Lamar Jackson here over Patrick Mahomes. Matt Holmes hasn't exactly been like super elite in the first 2 weeks. And just overall, like the Ravens side of the ball just a little bit more. They do have the higher team total at 28.75. And Lamar Jackson, I mean, there's just nothing really bad you can say about him. Last season, he was averaging nearly 90 rushing yards per game. This season only at 49.5, 8.5 rushing attempts per game, but that's still pretty good volume for a quarterback, and we know Lamar Jackson's going to be the fastest guy on the football field for the most part. And his dual threat ability of being able to run the ball and pass the ball at such a high level is pretty much unmatched here. So he is super expensive, but I feel like he's almost a necessity. You don't have to put him in the captain spot. He is super expensive, and we saw last night with Alvin Kamara, super expensive, but in the captain spot, I think he scored you around 70 DraftKings points, so it didn't really matter anyway. And Lamar Jackson certainly has that kind of upside. He can get you 3-4 passing touchdowns with 100 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown as well. And I will say this is a softer matchup for the Ravens offensively versus the Kansas City Chiefs defense than it is for the Chiefs offense, going up against one of the best defenses in all of football. So I'm going to side with Lamar Jackson over Patrick Mahomes, but if you can fit in both guys in your lineup, I would recommend that just because they can each easily get you 30 DraftKings points. If you want to play both, you're probably not going to be able to play like Lamar Jackson in the captain spot, and because that's going to be $19,000, and you're going to throw in Patrick Mahomes for $12,000 at flex. And then at that point, you're probably throwing in a guy like Nick Boyle, $800 just to make it work, which probably isn't the most exciting thing in the world to do. So you might just want to throw these guys in the flex spots just to be able to get both in, then maybe put someone like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the captain spot, or maybe even, I don't know if you have money for Travis Kelce to do that, or you're just going to have to go with the cheaper option, but definitely both quarterbacks here, and Lamar Jackson is obviously in a pretty good spot here. If you're looking at how the Chiefs have been defensively so far this season versus the past, they are 17th DVOA. They're allowing 24 DraftKings points per game to quarterbacks, 247 passing yards, and 1 passing touchdown. And they actually gave up a decent game to Justin Herbert in his first NFL start. So if Herbert was okay, I think Lamar Jackson should have a decent game as well. He's going to be able to get the ball to Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, and he should be able to do some damage on the ground as well. So I know it's obvious, but yes, Lamar Jackson is a fantastic play on this slate. Patrick Mahomes, $12,000. So like I said, I prefer Jackson over Mahomes, but you also get a $1,000 discount here. And if you can play both, I would really recommend it, because I would feel awful like having to fade Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson. Like just getting both in, I'd feel much better with that. I'd get different somewhere else. But I gotta say, I don't love the price tags on these guys. But I mean, given a showdown slate, you're gonna have interest. Now, so far this year, Mahomes is only averaging 256 passing yards per game, 2.5 touchdowns, which is fine, and 40 pass attempts per game as well. Not really doing too much on the ground with 27 rushing yards per game, but it's actually not terrible. But this matchup versus Baltimore does not get me excited in the slightest. They are third DVA versus the pass. They're only allowing 13.3 DraftKings points per game to quarterbacks, 232 passing yards per game, and 1 passing touchdown. But it is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, he's pretty much overall the best quarterback in football. You could make a case for Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, but just overall, Patrick Mahomes is, I think personally he is the best quarterback in football, and he is certainly paid like he's the best quarterback in football as well. He's got elite options to get the ball to you. You got Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield, which they finally used him in the passing game last week. You got Tyreek Hill, who can burn anybody deep, even though it's a terrible matchup for him. And you got Travis Kelce as well, one of the best, if not the best, tight end in all of football right now. So even though the matchup is pretty rough, it's a 54-point over-under. They have a team total of nearly 26 on the slate. They're also 3.5-point dogs, so they might have to throw the ball quite a bit. So yeah, Patrick Mahomes is obviously a fine option, but if you had to pick one, I'll side with Lamar. But again, just try to fit both in. And we'll move on to the running back spot, which the running backs on this slate, besides one, is gross. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 7,800, I think he's pretty much one of the best plays on the entire slate. I feel like he's a bit underpriced here. He should be a bit more expensive. So this price tag's kind of a gimme here, because what other running back do you want to play? You don't really want to play Mark Ingram. I mean, the Ravens running backs, good luck figuring it out. And really, none of these running backs are even the RB1. Lamar Jackson's the RB1 on that team for the most part. So now you're just trying to figure out who the RB2, RB3, and RB4 is going to be. And it's just pretty gross having to pick. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's by far the best running back on this slate, and probably someone you're just going to try to find a way to jam in. On the season, he's averaging 17.5 rushing attempts per game, 88 rushing yards, half a rushing touchdown per game on 5 yards per carry, which is pretty darn good. And the nice thing was he was actually using the passing game last week as well, which we knew he was going to be a capable pass catcher. We saw in college, and they didn't do it week 1, but week 2, they finally got involved in the passing game. Didn't really turn out to too much, but it was certainly nice to see him get 8 targets, which gives him 4 targets per game in the year, because again, he didn't get anything in week 1, but still, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in an excellent spot here. Just given the price tag, and this is going to be a high-scoring game, and just given the other running backs, he's by far the best running back here. The matchup is not good. The Ravens are second DVA versus the run, only allowing 13 DraftKings points per game to running backs, 85 rushing yards, and 0 rushing touchdowns so far. They also have a negative run-blocking advantage matchup here, according to PFF. So the matchup's not great, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's electric, and again, he's going to get the ball out of the backfield as well from Patrick Mahomes. So the floor's nice here. He's on a great offense, and he should get around 20 touches in this game. So definitely one of my favorite plays on the entire slate, especially at that price tag. I think he should probably be closer to 9K. So we're getting a really good price on him. And then after that, it gets gross pretty quick. We have a massive timeshare here in Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus Edwards. And it's pretty much just a guessing game on these. So if we're looking at the volume they got, Ingram, he's leading all these running backs with 9.5 rushing attempts per game with 42 rushing yards. J.K. Dobbins has been very efficient. He's only getting 4.5 rushing attempts per game, but he's got a rushing touchdown per game so far, and a yards per carry of 7.8 on 35 yards per game as well. I don't think he's going to keep up that efficiency, obviously, so he'll be a little bit hit or miss, and he's really not getting much in the passing game as well. Lamar Jackson's not typically a quarterback that targets the running backs in the pass game. But this is a good matchup for them. The Kansas City Chiefs are a team that will struggle versus the run. They did last year, and so far this season, they're allowing nearly 30 DraftKings points per game to running backs, 26 DVA versus the run, allowing 1.5 rushing touchdowns per game as well. So I think one of these guys are probably going to have a solid game. If I had to pick who I think is going to have the best game, I would say Mark Ingram, because he's going to get the most volume here. But it's kind of a guessing game for the most part. Gus Edwards is getting 7 rushing attempts per game, which is only 2.5 off Mark Ingram's, and he's also quite a bit cheaper, about $5,000 cheaper. So I would say Gus Edwards would be my favorite, just point per dollar wise, but it really is just good luck trying to figure out this usage that they're going to get. But just for value, because I'm going to try to fit in both quarterbacks, I would say Gus Edwards would be my preferred option here, just if I had to pair these 3 guys, because Ingram at 6,800. Yeah, he's probably going to get me close to double-digit touches, but even then, it's $7,000. I don't love it. J.K. Dobbins, not really getting too much work, but he's been very efficient, and I can't expect him to be that efficient each and every single week. I think he's going to be fine, but 5,600 for that. But then Gus Edwards, he should get me at least close to double-digit rushing attempts, and if he can get me like 40, 50 yards, and maybe he steals a touchdown, that'll be totally fine at 1,600. So I guess I'll side with Gus Edwards, but again, it is a very ugly situation. Then Darrell Williams, he got hurt in the last game, but he should be able to reclaim his role as the RB2 in this offense. In week 1, when he played the full game, he had 7 rushing attempts for 23 yards, which isn't great, but he also had 2 receptions for 7 yards on 2 targets. Now, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to get the majority of the work here, but Darrell Williams, he could see a handful of touches here, and at only $2,000, it might not be the worst play in the world for value, but I'd probably end up siding with Gus Edwards over Darrell Williams there because I would expect him to get more volume. But really, everybody after Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets very ugly very fast. I'm not going to play anyone below Gus Edwards for the most part. You just can't really trust them. Darwin Thompson, he got more work last week because Darrell Williams got injured, but it's probably going to be more of a split with them now since they're both healthy. So, I mean, really, again, like I said, everyone besides Helaire is just, it's a gross play for the most part. So I think we move on to the wide receiver position. And up top, no surprise, we have Tyreek Hill at 9,200. It was looking like he was going to have a dud performance last week, but he pulled through at the end with a long touchdown, which is exactly what makes him viable each and every single slate, especially on a showdown slate, because Tyreek Hill, he's a guy that can break a slate. Like, even though the matchup's not great at all, and I would not go there in cash games because I prefer going with Travis Kelce over Tyreek Hill this week, or tonight I should say, but he can take the top off of any defense. I know this is a very tough matchup. It's a very good secondary, but Tyreek Hill, he's got elite speed. He's got good talent. He's got the best quarterback in the game throwing him the football. So even if he's quiet for most of a game, he can certainly just come out of nowhere, catch a 60-yard bomb, catch a 70-yard bomb, and just absolutely break the slate, and he can do that 2 times as well. So Tyreek Hill, I hate the matchup here. I would not go there in cash games if you happen to be playing cash games for a showdown slate for some reason. I feel like he's more GPP just because the matchup sucks. They are third DVA versus the pass, only allowing 25.8 Draftkings points per game to wide receivers and 142 receiving yards per game and 0 touchdowns so far. But it is Tyreek Hill. He's getting 8.5 targets per game so far. He's scored in each game. 22% target share, 25% market share of the team's air yards. Now, only an 8 out of 5.7, but we know he's a burner. He can go down deep. So he's totally fine in tournaments, but not someone I'm really going to target in cash games just because, look, I can't play everybody. If I'm going to jam in Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and more than likely Helaire, I'm not going to have money for a 9,200 Tyreek Hill as well. So I'm probably going to have to pass there if you're going with the build that I was talking about. Obviously, you can make Tyreek Hill a focal point of your lineup, but just the matchup is not great because this is a very good secondary. Marquise Brown at 8,400. I don't really love using Ravens wide receivers for the most part, but if I was going to use one, obviously Brown would be by far my favorite option. He's got a 25% target share in the season, 37% market share of the team's air yards, and 8 out of 13.2. And he's getting about 6 targets per game. Now, none of these wide receivers are going to be high-volume guys, which always makes them a bit risky because the Ravens, they want to run the ball. They want to use Lamar Jackson, they want to use Mark Ingram, they want to use Dobbins, and they want to use Gus Edwards. There's 4 reliable run game options there for the Baltimore Ravens. So what are they going to do to pretty much all game if they can? Run the ball because the Kansas City Chiefs are pretty vulnerable on the ground compared to the air. But if you want to play one, Marquise Brown's obviously the top option here, getting 6 targets per game, which I think I already mentioned. And the matchup versus the Chiefs, it's not great, but they are 17th DVA versus the pass, which is pretty much bottom half or just mid-pack for the most part. 30.8 DraftKings points per game allowed to wide receivers, 143 receiving yards per game, and half a touchdown per game as well. Look, I don't love the price tag given his low volume. I mean, he's not like a guy that's going to get 10-plus targets each and every single week. That's just not going to happen for Marquise Brown because this is a run-first team. But he's fine. He can take the top off of defense, kind of like Tyreek Hill. I guess you could call him the light version of Tyreek Hill. But he certainly won't get that volume. But I think he is fine in tournaments. Sammy Watkins, 5,000. Dealing with a concussion. He is still questionable for this game. I'm assuming he's going to be good to go. He logged a full practice on their last one. So I'm going to assume he plays. And if he does, I think he's a fine option here. Most of the attention on this offense is going to be stopping the run with Helaire, or they're going to be trying to stop Travis Kelce, or they're going to be trying to stop Tyreek Hill. So Sammy Watkins could be the guy that's running at least a little bit free. Again, it's still not a good matchup. They have a very strong secondary, but Sammy Watkins is seeing 6 targets per game so far. Target share 15%, 4 catches per game, and 46 receiving yards. But at only $5,000, it being Patrick Mahomes, wide receiver 2, that's fine. I don't think that's bad at all. So he would be a fine mid-range play. If he happens to miss, that would be a bump for guys like McCole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson. But I am assuming Sammy Watkins plays. And at $4,600 for McCole Hardman, that's a tough sell for me because this guy is not a high-volume guy in the slightest. He's getting 2 targets per game so far with a target share of 5%, only 29 air yards, and a 7% market share of the team's air yards. He's kind of like a mini Tyreek Hill. He's super fast, and he can take the top off of defense, but the guy just does not get enough volume. Like for only $400 more, if Sammy Watkins happens to play, I can get a guy with a target share of over 10% or 10 percentage higher points better. So McCole Hardman is definitely a tough sell for me. Unless Sammy Watkins is out, I'll be interested because he's going to get more playing time, and just more volume. But I'm assuming Watkins does play, and at 4,600, a guy that's only going to get a handful of targets, maybe he catches one of those for a 60-yard touchdown, but that's going to be tough to bank on, and really only in play if you're building multiple lineups. Willie Snead, he comes in at 4,400. Again, none of these Ravens wide receivers are going to be high volume plays. Like Marquise Brown's getting 6 targets per game, Snead's at 3 targets, Miles Boykin is at 4 targets. So you're really not going to expect too much out of these guys. But I feel like one of them can have a pretty solid game here. And Willie Snead at 4,400, I think he's fine. He did score last week versus the Browns. He's got an 8 out of 9.7. 3 targets per game, 3 catches per game, 46 receiving yards per game. It's nothing too pretty. You're just kind of hoping for, like a 40, 50-yard game from Willie Snead. He catches 3 or 4 balls, and maybe, just maybe, he happens to find the end zone. And the Ravens wide receivers do get a softer matchup here versus the Chiefs, and the Chiefs wide receivers do get versus the Baltimore Ravens. Miles Boykin, he's actually getting some targets. He's getting 4 targets per game so far. He's caught 3.5 balls per game as well. An 18% target share, which is right behind Marquise Brown and ahead of Willie Snead, actually. So at his price point, I don't think it's the worst play in the world at only 3,400. Because again, if you guys are jamming in both quarterbacks, you're going to need some value plays. And obviously you're probably going to pair him up with some of their pass catching options. So I don't hate Boykin at only 3,400. That's not bad if he's going to get me close to 5 targets. Demarcus Robinson at 3,000. Again, kind of a low volume guy, but he's gotten 5 targets per game so far. He's caught 3 per game, only 24 receiving yards per game. But I wouldn't say he's the worst play in the world at 3,000. And if not McCole Hardman, if Sammy Watkins happens to miss this game and only $3,000, Demarcus Robinson would be a pretty strong play. But we'll have to monitor what happens to Sammy Watkins. But I am assuming he's going to play. But I still think he's a fine mid-range / value play, even if Sammy Watkins plays, just because he's pretty cheap here at 3K and he's getting more targets than McCole Hardman. I'd rather play Demarcus Robinson over McCole Hardman at that price tag pretty much every single day, because McCole Hardman's a very risky play, and Demarcus Robinson, I feel like he's maybe just a bit safer, and you can save $1,600 as well. And the rest of these guys, I just really don't think you can play them unless you're just trying to randomly hope for an injury, which you should never hope for an injury, but maybe someone gets injured, they end up going into the game, they get a couple more targets, or they just catch a random touchdown for the most part, but that's just not really something we can project. So I think we'll move on to the tight end position. And there's really only 3 guys you can look at. It's Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. Those are the 2 big dogs up top. And then you can throw in Nick Boyle at $800 just because he's seen 4 targets so far this year, so he's going to be at least somewhat involved. But we'll start up top with Travis Kelce at $10,000. He is super expensive. Head-to-head, I prefer Travis Kelce over Tyreek Hill, but I realize he's a little bit more expensive as well. And it's pretty much going to be impossible to afford him if you are jamming in both quarterbacks. But if you're not and you got some money for Travis Kelce, he's actually in a pretty good spot. He's my favorite pass-catching option on the Chiefs. The Baltimore Ravens secondary is very, very strong, but they have struggled versus tight ends so far. If we're looking at their numbers, they're 30 DVA versus the pass, but they're allowing over 20 DraftKings points per game to tight ends, a receiving touchdown per game, and 74 receiving yards per game as well. And we know Travis Kelce, the volume's going to be there. One of the best tight ends in the league, 9 targets per game, 7.5 catches per game. He's scored in each game so far. He's got a 25.97% target share, 31% market share of the team's air yards, and a 61% weighted opportunity share. So if you got the money for Travis Kelce, he's an excellent play, but I do realize he is pretty expensive, and so are a lot of the good plays on this slate. Then Mark Andrews at 8,000, the other starting tight end over on the Ravens. He's having a strong season so far. He's scored in quite a bit of touchdowns. I say quite a bit like he's got like 10 or 15 or something. He's only got 2 in the season. They did come in week 1. But he's a guy that can certainly score touchdowns, and he's going to be one of the top options here for Lamar Jackson to throw the ball to. On the season, he's got an 18% target share, 45% weighted opportunity share, and an 8 out of 11.2, so he's getting the ball down the field, which I do like. And the matchup versus the Chiefs, they're allowing 15.1 DraftKings points per game to tight ends, 70 receiving yards per game, and they're 17th DVA versus the pass. I wouldn't say it's the best matchup in the world, but Mark Andrews is a very talented tight end, and you can save $2,000 off of Travis Kelce, and he's certainly someone that can get you 5 to 8 targets here and certainly find his way into the end zone. So Mark Andrews is a fine play, but I mean, these guys are going to be a little bit tough to fit, but they're definitely the best receiving options. Like, both tight ends are my favorite receiving options on each team. I prefer Andrews over Marquise Brown, Willie Snead, Miles Boykin, and I also prefer Travis Kelce over Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Robinson, and McCole Hardman as well. And then Nick Boyle, 800. He might be one of my favorite pump plays here just because I think he'll get a couple of targets, and that's good enough for me at 800. You do not need much to hit value here. So far through 2 games, he's getting 2 targets per game so far, an 8% target share, which is gross, an 8 out of 3.5, 1.5 catches per game, and 7 receiving yards. You're kind of just hoping for a random touchdown here on the goal line from Nick Boyle, but he might be able to catch like 1 to 2 passes for, I don't know, 15 to 20 yards, maybe picks up a couple of third down conversions. And at $800, he's going to let you fit in guys like Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Kelsey, and Lamar Jackson. So I don't hate him as a value play, and the other guys I just don't really think are playable. The defenses, I'm not a fan of either defense here. I think this is going to be a pretty high-scoring game, but they are cheap, and if you want to get contrarian, playing the Chiefs defense against Lamar Jackson, I don't think many people are going to do that. And if this game happened to be low scoring and, they get a couple of sacks and Lamar Jackson just isn't sharp that night, he's turned the ball over, maybe the Chiefs defense at 2,600 is a fine play. I don't love it. They have a team total of nearly 30 against them. And the Ravens, I don't want to really use defenses versus Patrick Mahomes either. So the defenses are contrarian options, but overall, they're not going to grade out that well just because of the offenses that they're going to be going against. And the kickers are what they are. And you can't really project these guys. It's just if they happen to rack up field goals, they'll score well, but you can't really project field goals. But there should be a lot of points scored tonight, so I can definitely see these guys putting up points. And you got some of the 2 best kickers in the league here in Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker. Justin Tucker being one of the best kickers of all time, and Harrison Butker just a very overall solid kicker on one of the best offenses in football. So there should be opportunities for these guys, and I think they're fine value plays at 4,000 and 4,200 and a 54-point over-under. But I think it's going to be it for the video, guys. I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Really helps me out. Really do appreciate that. You can check out my content on Patreon if you want, but wait till the beginning of the month. And if you don't follow me on social media, feel free to do that as well. Links are in the description below to do all of that. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. I hope you guys enjoy some Monday Night Football as well.